Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of The Suited Shootist. This one was actually inspired by another YouTube channel. The guys over at Gat Daily on Gunday Brunch got me to thinking, and I'm sure I'll be able to forgive them for that at some point. But yeah, they were talking about if someone had to build their gun collection up from scratch, and so what I wanted to do is kind of look at my complement of carry pistols and go, okay, if I had to pick one of these that was going to be my only carry pistol from here on out, being as objective as I possibly could, what what would that be? And as kitschy as it is, there happened to be two, three, four of them. So it's not exactly a top five list, but the gear lists are somewhat popular, and why not take a swing for engagement whenever you can. So I'm going to preface this by saying I don't have a carry rotation. I don't pick my gun based on my mood or the alignment of the planets or the tides or anything whimsical. All of this is very intentional. But in the same vein, I have the luxury of having very hyper-specific niche tools. And so if I were to kind of pull that back, and another thing that got me thinking about this is I'm spending a lot more time, I'm actually doing a little bit of teaching of folks that are gun curious and, possibly making their first firearms purchase. And I'm not going to tell folks to go out and buy 5 pistols. So that's also kind of how I'm paring this down a bit. Not to say that these are my recommendations for a new shooter, but I've just, I've started to sort of look at, if I had to par things down, what would that be? Starting off, and like this was my initial dress clothes solution back when I was working a real suit and tie job. The Kel Tec 32 is definitely coming in last in the number 4 slot, because this is absolutely a very niche tool. It is, I'm reticent to call it an expert's gun because I don't consider myself an expert shooter, but it is certainly not something that I would recommend for the novice. It is very specialized, and in that arena, it works great with the mica holster. It is incredibly discreet, especially in circumstances where you're wearing lighter weight dress clothes. I still carry it periodically, but this is definitely the first one that I would get rid of if I had to, and it would not be my first choice if I was starting from scratch. Now, on the polar opposite end of that spectrum is, kind of my trusty workhorse, the full-size Glock with the Enigma. Now, I've got a cert gun in here right now instead of my normal Glock 19, because I was doing some dry practice earlier, and there's really no need to do that with a live gun. But this is obviously my optimal setup. And if I could, I would carry this absolutely everywhere. And there are people out there that will argue that I can. I would say an 80-ish% of the time, maybe 85% of the time, that's a fair assessment. There are instances where concealing this to the level that I think is necessary is a bit more challenging than I care to actually attempt. And so for a first timer, I think, obviously, I think a 17 is a little bit ambitious, but Glock 19-ish size, definitely a good place to start. But in the same vein, it's still, relatively speaking, a lot of real estate to accommodate. So if I had to sacrifice something else, this actually is the number 3. So moving on, this was actually it's the top 2, so it was in contention for the number 1 spot. And if you're following me, you're almost invariably familiar with Rhett Neumayer, Demonstrated Concepts. He makes a very compelling argument that an LCR, specifically the 22, is a fairly good general purpose defensive handgun for, to use Pat Rogers' expression, regular earth people. Is this going to be something that you are going to get into a gunfight with? No. I have been able to make 25-yard headshots with this. not at any kind of record-breaking time, but it's certainly doable. The fact that there's virtually no recoil on it certainly helps. And, I mean, a very compelling argument can be made for the fact that, 8 rounds of punch is a fairly formidable outfit for the average civilian defender. So, because of that, I really wrestled. But, for whatever reason, and it's probably just because of my own biases coming in, I take some comfort in the idea of being able to reload a semi-automatic pistol more expediently, faster than I can a revolver. And I know that that's more of an on-paper stats thing than it is really practical deciding factor. But, that and the capacity, to a degree, are why the number one slot, and if I had to only pick one, it would be my SIG 365, but I'm cheating here. The main reason why the SIG took the number one slot is because of the modularity. See, again, right now I've got an X frame on this. If I were so inclined, I could put the longer barrel and slide on it as well, which gives me something a little bit closer to, a Glock 19 size. The grip can be a little bit challenging because when I've got a full firing grip on it, there's not a whole ton of real estate for my support hand. So yeah, I'm not at this point able to shoot this as effectively as I can my Glock 19. But this can do stuff that the Glock can't. Namely, I can make it bigger and smaller without having to buy extra guns. And from a versatility standpoint, that's a big sell. I mean, that's a big sell. So, this is kind of my cheater because I can shrink it down to the 365 series if I really need something super discreet and super unobtrusive for denied area carry or high consequence type environments. And then, if I want to take a training class with it, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that this fire control group is compatible with the macro frame as well. So while it would necessitate a different holster, don't have to go out and buy a whole new gun. So there's some advantage there. So for, as much of a cheap sort of grab at likes and subscribers as this may be, I didn't set out for this to really be a list per se, but the number one slot goes to the 365 series pistol, and I do say series because of that modularity. And if I had to give up all the other carry guns, this would be the one that I would hang on to the longest because I think it spans such a broad width of applications that it's really just hard to say no to. So what do you guys think? Like, if you had to only carry one gun from here on out, and be realistic about it, because I know there are guys that are going to say, oh, it's going to be a Beretta or a Glock 34 with a light on it. And I mean, if your lifestyle actually supports being able to carry a gun that large all the time, cool. I'm a question whether you're really being realistic or not. So I want to hear that down below. What do you guys think? Am I off base? How many of you guys would go with the Glock instead? I want to hear that. So yeah, aside from that, I hope everybody has a fantastic week. Stay dangerous and stay sharp.